A Boston area nonprofit serving as a cultural bridge for aspiring classical musicians from Russia. To tell us about the work of Sound Ways is the president and founder, Maria Eliseeva, and one of the musicians being sponsored, Ivan Gusev. Thank you very much for being with us. I want to start with Maria. You're a music person. You've studied piano before. How did you go from that to starting up this organization to help these aspiring musicians?
Well, Chris, sometimes people just stumble upon things and they think these are worthwhile causes and they pursue them. I graduated from a music school in Moscow, but it never became my profession. I'm a patent lawyer. But at some point I met young musicians from Russia and the former Soviet Union with extraordinary talent. And I figured out that to help them with their first steps in the United States to launch their careers or maybe to continue their studies, it would be very helpful, and this is how Sound Ways started.
Ivan, they're still producing great musicians in Russia. You went to a great school, so why did you want to come to America?
Actually, my former professor in Russia, great professor Eliseeva of Sound Ways, advised me to go to Mr. Jerome Rose, with whom I study now. And I came here. I came to his festival 2 years ago, first time, and he was happy to invite me to the Manor School of Music to study master's program.
Which is also a very good school too.
Yes, it's a great school actually.
Yeah. So what's it been like, living in New York for you most of the time?
It's very interesting. A lot of interesting events, a lot of interesting people, and I enjoy it very much, and I am happy that I live in an international house where I can practice a lot on very good pianos.
Yeah, people have to put up with the noise because pianos can get loud sometimes. Maria, I want to ask you about this. Ivan talked about the pluses of coming here to study, but it's not all that easy. You got to go through paperwork. You got to get settled. Explain how your organization helps with that.
Yes, the process of actually coming to the United States to continue your career or to continue your studies can be quite daunting, and as we all say, the devil is in the detail. You need to apply for a visa, you need to provide all kinds of paperwork, you need to fly here, find housing, figure out health insurance. I mean, from little things of figuring out how the subway works to all kinds of things that you do in school or how you communicate with, different agents. It can be very difficult for someone unfamiliar with the system. A person can have an extraordinary talent, but still having a hard time navigating things like health insurance. So this is where step in and just make their life easier.
Ivan, what about getting that kind of help? How important was that for you?
It's very important because without Maria's help, it would be impossible to live here and to come here. Yes, such a thing like medical insurance is.
Yeah, because we're used to celebrity performers coming here from other countries, but you're not there yet, so you need some help, right?
Absolutely, yes. It's very, very important.
I want to ask you also, Ivan, about the kind of help you have with your music, and maybe we can bring up an excerpt from one of the performances that you gave recently. There was a Mozart sonata that was in the mix, and we can get a little bit of an excerpt from that. Ivan, sometimes Mozart sounds as if it's easy, but it just go through it really fast. But there's more to it than that. Talk about how you've learned to play that piece now.
I played this piece pretty for a long time, and it is not very easy piece actually. Maybe it sounds like that, but it is very hard to feel the right kind of motion to understand our polyphony, which is there.
These different voices at the same
all
time.
different voices, yes, and different slurs and other things. It should be sound like very easy, but actually it's not very easy piece.
And Maria, this gets into why you need this sort of additional time to learn how to play. You've got to have these contacts with different teachers. So explain how this builds on what musicians had before they come here.
Well, it builds on several levels. I think there are different schools, like the Russian School of Music has its peculiarities. It produced, world-famous musicians. But each school, I would say, in each country has its own pluses and minuses. And I think it's very beneficial to a musician to get, as we say, the best of both worlds. You can get training in the Moscow Conservatory, and then you come to the best performance places and best school in the United States, and you can enrich yourself with something that our schools can offer. I think it's very beneficial to anyone. And I think these musicians should benefit from this, I would say, cross-fertilization of different musical cultures.
Ivan, what about that? Have you learned or even just heard some interesting new music since you've been here?
Of course. I would say that it's a little bit another tradition, another understanding of music of different styles and epochs. And it's incredibly interesting for me to learn how people here understand it. And
this is BNN News, and we're talking about the musical mentoring of Sound Ways with Maria Eliseeva and Ivan Gusev. Ivan, I want to ask you about one of the other pieces that you've been learning, and I've seen two different versions of this, one earlier than the other. This is a sonata by Sergei Prokofiev, and the way you play it in the newer version, it's like there's this deeper understanding. You're really breathing this music. You're not just racing through it like a robot. Talk a little bit about that.
Sonata by Sergei Prokofiev, number 7 is a very difficult piece, and I learned it a lot of time ago, and I love to play it again and again, and I see new music in this piece each time. It's a really good experience to play one piece for a long time.
I have heard other great pianists who are not Russian play this, and I just don't like the way they play it. And I hear you, or I hear Richter, of course, the famous pianist from Russia. What is it that Russians get about this music that the rest of us maybe don't? What do they understand?
This sonata was written in 1942. It's
a very terrible year.
Yes, it's the Second World War, and maybe people in Russia can understand it better. I'm not sure. Maybe this situation of horrible situation, of fear.
And loss, too.
Yes.
Maria, talk about why it's important for Americans to be able to get musicians who can provide that insight in music. And I say Americans, of course, I'm talking about some of the Russian immigrants that you know, too.
Yes. Well, as I mentioned before, bringing somewhat different musical traditions, somewhat different ways of studying, ways of performing, can be very beneficial. It's a different way of performing Russian music. It may be a different way of performing, world-known Western music. Any cultural exchange, any cross-pollination, so to speak, is usually a very positive thing. If we think about some great piano teachers or music teachers that came from Russia, Van Cliburn. He was a student of Rosina Levina, who is a graduate of the Moscow Conservatory, and there were many, many, many others. And I don't want to make an impression that somehow it's way better than anything else, but it has its own tradition, it has its own style, it has its own richness, and bringing it here can be nothing but a good thing.
Finally, Maria, we should make sure that if our viewers want to find out more about Sound Ways, you've got a website that they can go to?
Yes, we get the sound website. It's www.soundways.net. We have some information about our organization there and, of course, the way to donate to us.
Thank you both very much, Maria Eliseeva and Ivan Gusev.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.